We are really excited to share with you our experience with the resilience analysis or in Colombia, measuring the resilience maturity of our power system and how this measure has an operation and investment decisions in our system, right? In order to begin with this story, I want to share with you how the resilience become a relevant subject in the planning of our power system. And the answer is clear: it's the energy transition. The energy transition comes with many new elements and operation conditions that makes us more vulnerable to new extreme events that previously we didn't imagine that it could have an impact on our operation, right, on our power system. And with this increase of the elements that we have to operate, we have all those traditional reliability studies that we use that evaluate the n-1 contingencies and stuff like that. They leave out an important component of risk analysis due to those events that we call major disturbances, right? And for sure, they are going to have a high impact once that they occur in our system. But then the next question that we have to answer is, okay, is it necessary for us? It's really useful for us to evaluate, to have an assessment on these major disturbances. The answer is, well, yes. The answer was in the background of our power system on the operation of the during the last years of the Colombian power system, because in these years we already have some major disturbances due to natural events, the like floods or the unavailability of energy resources due to El Nino and La Niña phenomenon. We have terrorist attacks on our energy infrastructure, and of course we have operational and infrastructure failures. In some of these cases, we took the enough decisions to avoid high impact conditions in our system. We think that we could avoid having high energy losses, but that shows that we have some resilience level in our daily operation without being evaluated. But in other cases, it was not enough. We have some blackouts or high energy losses due to these kind of events that say, okay, we have some resilience, but it was not enough to avoid all kind of events, right? So the next question was to answer, where are we? What is our level of resilience, and what do we have to do to improve those resilience to become stronger in any case, in any type of event, right? The answer was here. We start to work together with EPRI and the World Bank in order to have a framework to estimate the resilience of the power system that is called the Transmission Resilience Maturity Model, the TRM, right? And this model that is divided in 9 domains, it works with objectives that they tell you how many activities are you developing in order to have a resilient operation, and each one of these activities can go from basic activities that they are related with resilience, but you can do it in an informal or an ad hoc manner, right? And the last activities, they are already difficult activities to be implemented, but they show that you are highly mature, stable, and well managed activities, tools, and people that can work in order to improve the resilience of your operation, right? And then you can say that depending how many activities do you develop and how well implemented are they, you are going to have a maturity level in each one of these 9 domains, right? These domains, they some of them have in common the electrical operation affections, the electrical sector decisions, the complete investments, government decisions in the electrical sector, and we also have other sectors that have to work together with us in order to improve the electrical resilience in the system, right? In this first step, we took the decision to work with the first 3 domains that take into account the electrical operation of the system, right? Those are the risk identification, assessment, and management, the situational awareness, and the event response and recovery, right? And the results were this. In the case of situational awareness and event response and recovery, we saw that we already have implemented most of the activities, at least in a partially, largely, or fully implemented way, right? But in the case of risk identification, assessment, and management, we saw that we have many actions that we or studies, evaluations that were focused on those highly probable events that can occur on our system that we were already evaluating on reliability, right? But those events that are low, that have a low probability but high impact in our system, we were not taking into account those kind of events in our system, but we knew that they were going to have a high impact on our system. So the first decision was we want to improve the risk identification, assessment, and management for high impact events. And what we have to do is to start doing those actions that the TRMM said that we were not implementing, right? But how can we start doing, how can we start applying those actions? Well, the first thing that we did was going to the situational awareness and the event response and recovery actions that we were already doing and try to learn what were we doing right in those cases. And in the case of situational awareness, we saw that we already have an integrated security operations centers that they take into account digital threats, not only monitoring those threats, also sharing the information with all the operators and companies that work in the electrical sector, and also taking decisions together on how to face those threats. If some of the companies of the operators have already a solution and experience with that kind of threats, they share with all the sector in order to make the whole sector more is stronger, makes the system stronger in order to face that kind of threats. But not only those cyber attacks are being evaluated or monitorized, we already have a common work with institutions of the government that they have all the data about the climate conditions of the system, the defense ministry of Colombia. They are all continuously sharing information with us, with the operator of the Colombian power system, in order to have the signals that can prepare us on any in any extreme conditions that can be presented in our system, right? So the first approach that we have in the situational awareness was a common work with the whole system and other sectors that they improve our resilience in this part, right? In the case of the events response and recovery, we see that we have a strong planning and restoration routes. Those restoration routes are the movement, the actions to move the power system from an emergency state to a restorative state and then to a normal state, right? And to identify this route, we already have strong tools that we are using on an AI daily base learning that they are going to find the optimal restoration routes in each one of the scenarios that the operators try to represent in these models, right? And then the most important part is that those restoration routes that were find it in these models, they start to be shared with the whole sector, all the operators, the companies, and we they all together start working on workshops that they share the information of what assess, what elements have to participate in the restoration routes and what are the responsibilities of each one of the operators and participants of the system in this restoration, right? These workshops are doing in a periodical way in our system. Of course, it can be improved, but we already have actions here. And the objective of these workshops are to have a small impact once that the event happens, and to reduce the time that we take in order to have a fully recovered system after the event happens, right? So with this experience, we said, okay, that's right. The first thing that we have to do is to have a methodology and share this methodology with the whole system in order to know how to identify, assess, and manage those high impact and low probability risks, right? And this methodology was already built in the sector. It has a 5 steps. It's a 5 steps methodology. Each one of the steps has their own tools and people who are being trained to use these tools to go from the identification of those events that can represent a higher threat in our system due to our climate, social, and technological conditions, having a characterization of these events, creating these scenarios where these events can be represented, and with the simulation and calculation of the metrics of resilience, we can have results that we can share with the other steps of situational awareness, event response and recovery, and also to have a new variable to have an investment decision, right? In this case, what in all of those steps, they are going to have a high impact of what is the nature of the event, right? What a classification of how the event can affect our power system. In some cases, they can have an affection on the infrastructure of the electrical power system, or some of them can happen, can change the operation of the power system, and some of them can change the availability of resources in order of the energy in the system, or can change the energy demand of the system, right? In some of these cases, we can try to avoid the event to happen in the case of cyber attacks or human errors. But in other cases, like nature events, we can't avoid those events to happen. And what we try to do is to evaluate how wide the impact can be, and with that impact, identifying the impact of the system, try to have the recovery plans, right? But how can we evaluate the impact, the number of elements that can be affected due to those events? We have another tool called the RSIF, developed with the help of EPRI, that it evaluates once that the event happens. For example, I don't know, an earthquake or a flood that affect a number of elements of a substation, right? Not only those elements that were disconnected due to the event are going to be those that have an affection. Once that those elements have an affection, they are going to have an cascade effect in the system, and an event that started in one substation can have an impact on a high number of elements in an area, right? Once taking into account probability of overloads, voltage levels that can be affected in the case in an occurrence of that kind of events, we identify the most critical events, the most critical substations or the power plants that can have an effect on the system and an impact, and identify the area that was affected by that event. We share all those elements in that area with the event response and recovery team, and they start evaluating how, if that area is going to be affected, is going to be disconnected in the event, how to start recovering the system back, right? So finally, what we saw after implementing this is that we have an important change in the resilience mature level of that risk identification, assessment, and management. On the first part, because we already have tools and people prepared in order to have a specific studies in this part of the analysis of resilience analysis, and on the other hand, because it's already connected with the situational awareness and even response recovery, right? It's already an improvement since 2021. Already here in 2023, we have some interesting examples of high impact events that we have in the Colombian system. The first one is that right now we are already facing an El Nino phenomenon since the last months of the 2023 until now, but we start to take actions, not once that the El Nino started, but from the beginning of 2023, that we saw that we have some probabilities of having an El Nino phenomenon. We already start to have meetings with the companies, operators, and governments, and taking decisions about what are the regulatory actions that are going to be applied in the El Nino conditions. We started monitoring the early availability of all the generation resources, and having a differential energetic assessment of black swans or another disruptive events that can happen during El Nino conditions. It means that we have been preparing the system with enough time that until now we don't have any affection. We can say that we are finishing this El Nino session without any problems in the operation. Also, right now, as my partner of Chile said, here in South America, we are facing wildfires. And since then, before they started, we started to having a coordination with other sectors in order to ensure basic resources for the population. Those resources, of course, it's water, energy, fuels. And what we do is to say, okay, what are the availability of each one of the sectors in order to secure those resources and guarantee a complete supply chain for the people. right? In that case, we said, okay, in the energy sector, we can start reducing the operation with hydropower plants, that is our main resource in the system, and start increasing the operation with thermal power plants, for example. And in that case, we continue have a situational risk awareness, making studies in order to say, in these conditions that we are having in the system, what are the elements or the infrastructure that can be affected by any of these wildfires. We have a continuous monitoring of the wildfires that have in the geography of Colombia, and once that one of the substations or lines that could be affected by those wildfires, it was reported to the operation center in Colombia, and take into account that we could have in any moment an affection in those elements, right? So they are like good results, but we still have a lot of things to develop. We want to use these resilience results to be a standardized investment variables in order to invest in new transmission and energy generation works in Colombia. We want to start analyzing more events. We have a good list of events that can be analyzing this methodology, but we want to complete this point of view. We want to have a wide view of this system in order to be stronger in these cases. And we want to, of course, complete the other six domains of the TRMM that we can't complete because we need the help or the information that we share with other sectors, right? To do this, we will have to formalize sectors working group in order to complete the studies and apply the results of these studies in order to improve the resilience of our system. And that would be all. Thank you for your attention, and I'm going to be here for any question.